Good evening, everyone. I would like to call this council meeting of November 18th, 2024 to order. I will ask if you are able to please stand for the national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command.
Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Please be seated. I would like to begin by reading a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate council chambers to the nearest exit through the chamber doors and obey all instructions given. And if assistance is required, please see Madam Clerk. Once you have evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of Town Hall. Also, please ensure you place your cell phone on silent or turn it off. And lastly, the Town of Lincoln Council meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. Closed captioning is available on all our videos by selecting the closed captioning button on the bottom right of the video. The Town of Lincoln, being part of Niagara Region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Attawandaronk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality and the Town of Lincoln stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Members of council are in attendance this evening with regrets from Councillor Timmers. We have staff in attendance as well as representatives from the Citizens Tree Canopy and Protection Working Group, Hospice Niagara, and Regional Councillor Foster in attendance this evening. Do members have any amendments to the order of the agenda? There being none, are there any declarations of interest? Do members have any announcements? Please remember you have a limit of 3 items. I'm starting with Councillor Murray. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mayor Easton. I just wanted, I was able to attend the grand opening of the Jordan Village rehabilitation, is that what we're calling it? The grand opening of our new and improved Jordan Village. And I just wanted to give a shout out to our staff who did an excellent job with that project. It was just a beautiful experience to be able to be in that plaza together. The roadways and the walkability was really fabulous. And so thank you very much.
Excellent. Councillor Brunet.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Last Friday, along with most of council, had the opportunity to attend, I believe, what is the final roundtable that staff has been working on with an opportunity to talk to business sectors. This was an agricultural roundtable, and I just wanted to thank staff, and specifically Paul Deaney and Cameron Rotz, for all their work in preparing all the invitations and the agendas for these. They were wonderful. I was able to attend 5 of the 6, and I found them very, very supportive in all these sectors, whether it be the health sector, agricultural, greenhouse, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to thank staff and recognize them for all their hard work. Additionally, Madam Mayor, I received a phone call from a resident who is moving to Lincoln over the next 2 weeks, and she has a 5-year-old son. He's autistic, and she hasn't moved in yet, but she is seeing some of the traffic patterns in the neighborhood she's going to be living in, and was concerned about her 5-year-old son crossing the road to catch the school bus. So reached out to our staff, and within 24 hours, they're in the works to put up a sign in that neighborhood to ensure that her son, when he moves in, will be able to cross the road and catch the school bus safely. So to staff, again, I thank them for their hard work. And finally, Madam Mayor, this Wednesday, November the 20th, there is a public meeting taking place from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock at the Fleming Center here in Beamsville on 5020 Serena Drive. This is for the Niagara Peninsula Energy, which is proposing to build a new transformer station up on Spring Creek Road. This is between Mountain Street and Frost Road. It's will be built adjacent to a Hydro One and right-of-way. So there's been an EA, Madam Mayor and Council, there's been an EA. But for anyone that lives up in that neighborhood, in that adjoining property, or anyone that lives in Lincoln that is concerned about, how we are responding to increased electrical capacities and resilience in Lincoln, West Lincoln, and Grimsby, please come out to this public meeting, again, this Wednesday, November 20th, from 2 to 4 p.m. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And I think that project has been 5, possibly 6 years in the works, so that's really good news. Thank you very much. And Councillor Patrieva.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. On November 7th, I attended the Wrap to Encourage Pancake Breakfast campaign fundraiser for Jillian's Place, along with our town clerk, Julie Kirklos. That's why we're wearing the purple scarves this evening and purple tie. It was a fundraiser and sponsored event that brought many to show their support, as well as other surrounding municipal politicians and community stakeholders. These events are so vitally important to organizations like Jillian's Place, where we need to show our support and commitment. Jillian's Place is a vital resource for many, and that is why I commit to attending these events to help lend my support to these organizations that lift up others in need in our community. Thank you to those that organized this successful event, and I'm very pleased later on in tonight's agenda that we'll be bringing forth the proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So I appreciate you doing that, Your Worship. And Friday night, Councillor Reimer and I attended the Beamsville Firefighters Turkey Roll. We didn't win a turkey, though we did have fun. Talked to a lot of people, and it was a terrific event. I've never seen so many people there before, so I think the firefighters did very well, and hats off to them. And if you didn't make it to that event, Friday, December 6th, it's going to be in Jordan, around number 2. So Councilor Reimer and I are already talked, and maybe we'll have some better luck in the East End. I don't know. We'll see. Thank you.
You have to take Councillor Timmers with you. She wins. Oh, I think the Fosters do too, now that I think of it. Okay, all right. That's that. All right, we're moving on now to item 8 on the agenda, which is proclamations. We have 3 proclamations this evening, and the first being to recognize November 2024 as CPR Awareness Month. And I'll now read the proclamation. Whereas cardiac arrest results in the abrupt loss of heart function and can happen anywhere, anytime, and without warning. Whereas cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, is the emergency life-saving act of doing chest compressions to manually help the heart pump during cardiac arrest. Whereas time is critical for cardiac arrest victims to restore circulation and prevent brain injury or death, and the quick action of bystanders is essential to call 911, perform CPR, and use an automated external defibrillator, AED. And whereas almost 60% of Canadians have had to perform first aid on a stranger or someone they love, and whereas the Canadian Red Cross urges individuals to acquire first aid and CPR skills as effective CPR when used in conjunction with an AED can double a person's chance of survival. Whereas November is recognized as CPR Awareness Month and is an opportunity to raise awareness of the importance of learning how to perform CPR and how to use an AED. Whereas the town of Lincoln recognizes the increasing need for Canadians to receive this critical training and unite our efforts by making a commitment to save lives. Now therefore, I, Sandra Easton, Mayor of the town of Lincoln, do hereby proclaim November 2024 as CPR Awareness Month. Our next proclamation is for recognizing November as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and the town of Lincoln has also held a flag-raising ceremony this morning in support of Jillian's Place, the Wrapped in Courage campaign. I want to thank those that attended. The town of Lincoln encourages everyone to wear purple on November 25th, 2024, in support of survivors of gender-based violence. On behalf of Jillian's Place, our town clerk, Julie Kirklos, who is now a new board member, will receive the proclamation on their behalf. And I know she has a few comments, so Julie, if you would go ahead with that, and then I will read the proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor Easton, and thank you, councillors in the town, for the ongoing commitment. It's an honor to be part of this vital organization. The month of November is indeed recognized as Domestic Violence Awareness Month and dedicated to raising awareness, supporting the survivors, and promoting prevention efforts to end abuse. However, as we all know, this is a daily occurrence, and the month of November highlights this important cause. My hope in being part of this organization is that I can make a positive impact to this community and give back. So thank you, Mayor Easton.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Whereas domestic violence affects millions of people, impacting individuals regardless of race, age, gender, or socioeconomic status, creating significant barriers to safety and well-being. And whereas November 25th is recognized as International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, the month of November also recognizes Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And whereas 16 days of activism against gender-based violence is an international campaign that is observed during November 25th to December 10th, and the Government of Canada's theme for this year is Come Together, Act Now, which emphasizes the importance on involving everyone in Canada, particularly men and boys, and changing social norms, attitudes, and behaviors that contribute to gender-based violence. And whereas it is a call to action urging all of us to recognize the signs of gender-based violence, to reach out for support for ourselves or loved ones, become an ally by adopting these actions all year long. Listen. Be open to learning from the experiences of others. Believe, support survivors and those affected by violence. Educate yourself and others, learn the facts about gender-based violence, and participate in an event. Speak out. Add your voice to call out violence. Act. Give your time or donate to organizations working to end gender-based violence. Whereas the town of Lincoln stands in solidarity with survivors of domestic violence, remember those who have lost their lives to this tragic epidemic, and it commits to advancing resources, policies, and practices that support victims and empower them to rebuild their lives. And whereas last year in Ontario, an average every 6 days, a woman or child lost their lives due to male violence, and statistics reveal that 1 in 3 women will experience a form of gender-based violence in their lifetime, underscoring the urgent need to address and prevent such violence. And children who witness domestic violence are especially vulnerable and have far-reaching and profound effects on their emotional, social, and overall development. And whereas we must recognize those who work tirelessly to advocate, educate, and provide essential support year-round to support survivors, raise awareness, and bring about positive change in our society. And whereas by raising awareness and educating our communities, we can help dispel the stigma surrounding domestic violence, empower individuals to seek help, and create a culture of zero tolerance for abuse. And whereas the Town of Lincoln passed a motion on October the 23rd, 2023, to declare intimate partner violence as an epidemic and urged all levels of government for their commitment to end gender-based violence. And whereas the Town of Lincoln urges all residents to observe this month by increasing awareness about domestic violence, supporting those affected, and actively participating in efforts to eliminate and prevent violence within our community. Now therefore, I, Sandra Easton, Mayor of the Town of Lincoln, do hereby proclaim November 2024 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I'm sad to say, ladies and gentlemen, that in my lifetime, that ratio of 1 to 3 started out at 1 to 10, and we thought that was an embarrassment, but really 1 in 3 is just an overwhelming, abysmal situation. Our next proclamation is for Giving Tuesday, and I will now read the proclamation. Giving Tuesday is an annual day of giving and generosity, and Giving Tuesday is a celebration of generosity and volunteerism. Whereas Giving Tuesday inspires communities to come together and donate their time and money to truly important causes that help the most vulnerable residents. Whereas since forming in 2021, Niagara Gives and Giving Tuesday has inspired more than $300,000 in charitable donations to Niagara organizations such as Lincoln's Village of Hope. And whereas the Town of Lincoln recognizes and celebrates the incredible contributions of individuals and organizations and recognizes the increasing need for their services. Now therefore, I, Sandra Easton, Mayor of the Town of Lincoln, do hereby proclaim December the 3rd, 2024 as Giving Tuesday. Madam Clerk, that is the end of the proclamations. I'll move on to item number 9, recognition and achievements. We have none this evening. Item 10 is delegations and presentations, and we will now consider item 10.1 being an update presentation from the Citizens Tree Canopy and Protection Working Group regarding progress on Lincoln's tree policies and practice. And here to provide the presentation, we have group member Liz Bennion. Good evening, Liz, and thank you very much for coming this evening. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to give you a quick update on the progress of the working group on Lincoln's tree policies and practices. So it was council direction that led to the formation of the working group. Last year, there was a devastating and unauthorized tree loss on a development site in Beamsville. And in response, council asked for a review of tree-related town practices and policies to ensure they reflect current best practices. A working group led by senior staff was formed. Local citizens groups who have been active on urban forest issues were also asked to participate. Staff with specific areas of expertise, such as communications or bylaw enforcement, are included as needed. As well, experts from other organizations, such as the Vineland Research Center and the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, are asked for guidance as needed. So our first meeting was held 1 year ago, in November 2nd, 2023. So that's why we thought it would be nice to give you an update. So the goal of the working group was to improve the health of the town's trees and increase Lincoln's tree cover through implementation of best practices already employed in other municipalities, so that Lincoln citizens can enjoy all the economic, environmental, health-related, green infrastructure, recreational, and climate-related benefits of a healthy urban forest. And the final goal of the entire exercise will be the development of a comprehensive urban forest management strategy. So the first meeting was in November. In December, a best practices report was delivered. It was a 53-page report. That sounds like a lot, but there were a lot of pictures and diagrams and examples in that report. It contained 12 areas of focus with recommendations for implementation, and it was delivered, as I mentioned, a month after the working group was formed. I'm not going to go through all these target areas because I'm going to talk about I'm going to talk about them individually and let you know what's happening with them. That great photo you're seeing there is a picture that was submitted by the Green Herons Group. We held a heritage tree hunt, which I'll talk about just briefly later, and they went out of their way to photograph and catalog a lot of the great trees in Lincoln. So what has been accomplished since November 2023? One of our targets was setting tree canopy targets or trying to figure out some way that we could enhance the tree cover. And so what we decided was we'd make a target of 1,000 trees to be planted this year with the idea that in future years that would increase. This target has already been exceeded. The second area of focus was achieving tree canopy targets. How can we do that? So things like tree giveaways, which were held this year. We also planted a Miyawaki mini forest, and it's actually my understanding I've made a mistake on this slide. That should be 800 plus trees if you count the Bird's Berry Patch that was planted on West Avenue. So in the new tree procedures and standards manual, several things that we focused on in our report will be in that new standards manual. So for instance, tree planting guidelines. So staff have been reviewing tree planting guidelines from expert organizations such as Landscape Ontario, and those new tree planting guidelines that help ensure that trees that are planted do well will be incorporated. Quality and quantity of soil requirements. This is really necessary because trees are entirely dependent in terms of their health and growth on the soil that they're planted in. So ensuring, for instance, that street trees have the best possible chance of success by ensuring that we require the right kind of and quantity of soil. We've also looked at the tree list. So every municipality has a tree list. It's something that they would give to developers. It's something that they would depend on themselves for their own parks departments, et cetera. And it could act as a guide for residents too who are looking to plant the right kind of trees in the right places. So we reviewed the town's tree list, and it's not completed yet because there's been requests to add a few more things to it. So we have a tree list, a shrub list, trees that are specifically for street trees, trees that could be maybe not street trees but added to parks, and the focus is on native plants. It's not entirely native plants at the moment, but it's focused on that. We've also looked at protection for trees during construction. So these may be, for instance, trees that are on municipal property, so street trees that might be affected by development that's happening on the lot that they're adjacent to, or trees in parks or other publicly owned trees that could be impacted during construction, just to make sure that the hoarding that is put around those trees that are supposed to be retained is sufficient to do the job. And then also, we looked at planting standards for parking lots. That's still a matter that's under discussion. And maintenance best practices for newly planted trees, so things like watering schedules, pruning schedules, and that kind of thing. Okay. We've also engaged in a lot of different kinds of tree maintenance education. So the town has created a Rooted in Lincoln page that will provide detailed information on the planting and care of trees. And I just want to thank the town staff for this, because I love the Rooted in Lincoln words, and I love all the design that's going to go on around that. I think it sends a great message. And we're also looking at a private tree protection bylaw. So after much research on private tree bylaws enacted in other communities, staff have drafted a private tree bylaw for Lincoln, and they're engaging right now in focus groups with citizens and stakeholders to hear about concerns with that potential bylaw and also to gauge support for it. And the first of those focus groups was held last week on November 14th, and the second one is being held tomorrow evening. Another thing we looked at was adequate replacement ratios for trees. So obviously, the size of the tree determines how much benefits it provides to a community. And it actually goes up, the benefits go up exponentially with the size of the tree and the canopy volume of the tree. So in reviewing, what it would actually take to replace all the value of trees that are coming down, you have to do it by size, and what you're seeing there in that chart is what is in the draft bylaw. It'll be part of the draft bylaw. So as many as 8 trees may have to be replaced if a large tree comes down. We've also held numerous things to help the town reach its tree planting goals. So we had the first Earth Day event. It was held at the Fleming Center. And we had a tree sale that was part of that event, and also some tree giveaways. We had 10 different groups participating in that event. And we had pretty good participation from the public too, considering it was the first one. There was also a small tree planting on Hillside with the Benchland Citizens Group. Ontario Green hosted a heritage tree hunt where we invited citizens to select their favorite tree in one of 5 categories, take a picture of it, and send the information in to us. And 5 prizes were awarded. We worked with SafeTree on that. They sponsored one of the prizes, and all the winners have been published online. And then as well, we worked with the NPCA and many funders. Again, the staff was really great about being able to go out and find funding opportunities and use those funding opportunities for this wonderful tree planting that we did at the Val Fleming Butterfly Garden on November 2nd. So that's where we planted the 800 native trees and shrubs in what I believe is the region's very first Miyawaki mini forest. The town has also engaged in a lot of different activities to reach out to the community. One of the things they've done is they've created an online map where if you have a native tree that you've planted, or any tree that you've planted for that matter, you can put it on the map, and it shows up. And you can put some information about it. And it's one way of sort of cataloging all the trees that are being planted around the community. There's also been tree giveaways and rain barrel sales. There's been an effort to reach out to the local business community. I think I might be wrong about this, and if I am, somebody can correct me, but I think it was over 400 trees that were supplied during the tree sale. So those trees were provided, I believe, at a subsidized price to businesses. They ordered them in advance. So we're also looking at new opportunities. So one of the things that's come up and that we're going to be doing next fall is a planting on Ashby Drive. This is a residential lot that at one time was kept undeveloped because a potential roadway could have gone through there. The town has seen that that's surplus to their needs, and so that is going to get planted up with 75 native trees and shrubs, 24 different species. Funding for that has been received through Ontario Green by TD Friends of the Environment. And we are working with Newport Landscaping and Design, which is a local group that will help prepare the soil for that planting. And the town will provide some signage and some seating on that site eventually. There's also Jordan Lyons Park. This is an area that has a small natural forest that is mostly oak and hickory. And you can tell from looking at the forest that those trees all started to grow about the same time. They're all about the same size. They're all about the same age. And unfortunately, some of them are reaching the end of their natural life, and we have been losing some trees out of that park. And so because it was being maintained as a mowed site, nothing was being able to regenerate, although oak and hickory should be able to regenerate fairly well. So we've suggested that part of that park be allowed to regenerate, and we work with park staff to figure out what areas we're going to continue to be mowed, and that's the areas where you have the picnic tables, so that is still a mowed area. And then the other part is regenerating. And it was really interesting to me, and I was really delighted to see how much is already coming up. All kinds of little trees are already sprouting. It hasn't even been a year. All kinds of asters and all kinds of wildflowers were starting to come up. And you just start to wonder, how long can these seeds just sit in the ground waiting for a chance? But it's really exciting. And I've talked to some folks from Niagara College, and they're talking about doing a BioBlitz, so coming year after year to have a look at what's there and get some data on, what's regenerating. So I think all of that is pretty exciting. And there's also an opportunity in the future, we haven't done it yet, to look at what I call replanting the ancient forest. So there are some tree nurseries that collect local seed from local important trees. And so you would actually know, like, the genetic heritage of the trees that you're planting and know that they are from this specific area. And preserving the local genetics is just as important as planting native trees. So that's the update, and I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Well, that's pretty exciting, Liz. And, I hardly know what to say because we've been talking so much about the effectiveness of community input and how to achieve it. And, as a form of small committee that had both staff and members of council and the public on it, it really has, I think it's extremely successful, and you've accomplished so much in a short period of time, really. And I just love the idea of the diaries, because I know we've kept diaries about trees on our own property because of the fact that they were planted by notable members of our family, and so that's also very exciting. It's a very, very, very satisfying report. So, councillors, I have Councillor Majima. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Liz, for the presentation. I was thinking when you were talking, when I saw you here years ago, you took me for a tour in Oakville. And I remember the one particular park, Donovan Bailey Park, is it? It just, I was like, I couldn't remember it, and it just hit me when I look at you. It was a big, long stretch of a park that was just basically open and grass. And your team went in and planted natural, native plantings all along the edge and slowly sort of pinched it in so there was less grass to take care of, less sprays to spray, less maintenance for everybody. And that's all what I always remember of the good work that you did there on the tour that you took me on. So I was going to ask you that, if there's anything like that in Lincoln, and then you brought up the 5020 Ashby Drive, which is really the same thing. You're filling in a plot of land that otherwise is just maintenance. It does nothing but sit there and need to be maintained, right? So saving time, money, improving the environment, all that. So that's great. So is there anything else that you see in Lincoln for doing the same kind of thing? That's one question I have.
Well, I know that staff has been looking at other potential sites, parklands where you could naturalize a bit of it, or other places to plant trees. So I know staff has that work well underway.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask you about the private tree protection bylaw session that happened last week. I didn't get to go. How did that go from your perspective? How did you feel that the public is receiving the idea?
So unfortunately, I didn't get to go because I was hosting a renewable energy webinar that night. However, I heard the feedback was good. The people who were there participated. There's going to be another one tomorrow night, so I think after the second one, we'll be able to report back overall. And then, these focus groups are a step towards bringing it out to the public through a bigger consultation.
Okay, thank you. And another question, my final question is, I know that in Jordan Lyons Park, we lost quite a bit of trees to the emerald ash borer a few years ago. It's probably 10 years ago now. Is that still a problem?
It is still a problem, but they've pretty much killed all the ash trees here. So
Yeah.
I've noticed on my property, there's some young ashes that are starting to come up. Whether, the ash borer will come back eventually and kill those off too, it's a possibility. But I think the lesson that we should learn from emerald ash borer and from, so many other trees that we've lost through the same kind of thing is diversity is the key to resiliency. So we need to make sure we're not planting too many of the same kind of species. And that was the problem with ash trees. They were widely planted. Norway maple, for example, 14% of most of the southern Ontario's municipalities, their forests are Norway maple. So if something came along and took those out, or oak wilt, if oak wilt came along, we'd be in real serious trouble here.
Yeah.
So I think the key message is we need to plant as many different types of species as possible so that we can weather these kind of pests or diseases or climate change, whatever's coming our way. We need to be sort of prepared by using what nature does, which is a lot of biodiversity.
Yeah, diversity. I mean, that's good for sustainability of a lot of things, not only the environment and the plantings, but a business, for example.
Right.
You don't necessarily want to invest everything in one place. You want to make sure that you've got a little bit of everything everywhere, and then you're looking out for the long term and anything that could come your way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Murray.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Through you to Liz. Liz, thank you for being here today. I just wanted to follow up on Councillor Ranjima's question, because I was wondering something along those lines in terms of biodiversity, in terms of replanting the ancient forest. So do we not run the risk then, if we're going to get a whole series of trees from the exact same genetic makeup, and then something goes wrong with that genetic makeup, and now we've lost all of these trees? Is that not a concern?
If that was well, it is a concern, but it's a concern we have right now, because a lot of the trees we buy from nurseries are clones of each other. So they have the exact same genetics. And you wouldn't find the exact same genetics in nature because you have different trees sharing, pollen and things with each other. So a lot of the trees we buy from nurseries are clones, and they have the exact same genetics. When we're talking about replanting from the ancient forest, so every acorn or seed that we plant is going to be slightly different because they're getting their genes from two parents of different trees. And then the other thing is, we wouldn't be just planting those. That's just part of what we would do. It would be nice to see more of our local genetics from our local trees planted, but we'd never be planting 100%. We'd be lucky if we were planting 5.
Thank you. And another question, if I may, Mayor
Go
Easton.
ahead.
So then on your slide number 9, which is about the adequate replacement ratios, I know that one of the things that precipitated this committee and looking at our bylaw and how we're replacing trees was that we had a clear cutting of an area. So, and a lot of those were mature trees, probably, on the high end of your graph here, the bigger trees. So logistically speaking, so if I have a large tree in, say, a 20 square foot area, how can I possibly replace 8 trees in the same 20-foot square area?
So when you're looking at replacement trees, you're not necessarily looking at replacing them on the same property. And in fact, we know we couldn't do that, especially on development sites. So it would be replanting those trees elsewhere, if there's a possibility to do that. Or you can take payment in lieu. But there are lots of places. When I'm driving around in the car with my son, he always drives me crazy by saying to me, "Mom, are you looking at trees again?" And yes, I probably am. I'm looking out the window and I'm looking at trees. And what I'm seeing is all the places trees could be planted where we don't have them. And I think if you drive anywhere around any of our communities here in Lincoln or anywhere in Niagara, you will see lots of houses that have no trees. So potentially, tree planting could be, we provide trees free of cost that have been paid for through that replacement program to homes that don't have trees. So just to give you an example of a program from another community, in the City of London, there's a group called Reforest London. They literally, I think I've mentioned this before to council, they literally hire students during the summer. They have a tree nursery. They hire students during the summer. They give them wagons. They fill the wagons with native trees and with brochures about how to maintain trees. And then they walk through neighborhoods, and any house that doesn't have a tree on the front lawn, they knock on the door. And they ask people, would you like a tree? And if they want a tree, they plant the tree for them. They give them the brochure about maintenance. So there are, I can't imagine having more trees than we know what to do with. We would figure out a way to get trees planted, I think.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor Easton.
Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Through you to Liz, thank you for the work that you've done this past year, along with your team. Question I have is the agriculture community. Fruit trees, there's all sorts of different types of trees. They're located in all sorts of different types of locations. Have we consulted, have we worked with the agriculture community to find out what their opinion is on trees, their preservation, or their,
So
None of the
removal?
None of the things that we're doing affect the agricultural areas. So we're talking about urban trees, and agriculture areas are protected by provincial policy. So that's not part of our consideration.
Okay, so just to clarify, this is strictly within urban areas?
It's not on agricultural lands.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pachariva.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, Liz, for being here tonight. Thank you very much for the 5020 Ashby Drive project. I've had a few residents for the last number of years wanting to do something there because it's just an open green space. The town put a lot of money and effort into rebuilding Ashby Park and planting trees, native trees there, and because it was, virtually an area with no shade. Now, this one resident, I love the idea of the trees and the benches and that, but are there going to be benches around, are there going to be trees around the benches to provide shade? Because that was one of the issues, is that when you do, if you do the trail or you've got little ones over at the park, you want to stop and have a little rest or a drink or something like that. There is a couple benches there, but there's no shade. So, because it doesn't show on the diagram here, but this isn't final, it's just kind of conceptual at this point?
It isn't final. There will be some changes to it, and there will be some shade right behind where the benches are going to go. It's an interesting point that you bring up, and, when we're doing parks planning, one of the things we need to make sure of is with playgrounds, that there are trees planted, especially on the west and the south, because that's where you're getting the strongest afternoon sun. And that's why we were also happy to, not mow the area around the picnic tables in Jordan Lyons Park, because people picnicking want to be under the shade of a tree.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you, Worship.
Councillor Brunei.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to thank Liz and the other members of the working group for giving me the opportunity to work with them for the last year. It's been a privilege listening to their passion and their unending desire to move this forward. They're all working hard to make sure that we try to make this the best it can be, not only in the meetings, but in all these things they've talked about with the public engagement, the thought of the Mayawaka Forest, which seemed to be just a dream and now is reality, the Ashby Park and all these things. These haven't happened by just falling into our laps. Applications to TD Green had to occur, and it was Liz and Jane and Val that that made this happen. That Verna and Jane and Liz worked on these applications at night, after hours, on weekends. And so I just want to thank them for their passion and all their hard work, as well as staff. And sometimes when you bring these committees together, things can't happen just because people want it to happen. We have to have staff to buy in. And so I wanted to thank Matt Bruder, Samantha Witkowski, Melissa Shee, Matt Bruder, our CAO, as well as Lillian Busnell, our comms team, under the direction of Paul Deanny, who have been here to assist us, making sure that we're getting all this out to the community. So a lot of work has taken place, but we still have a lot of work to occur. And I just wanted to end by, Madam Mayor, I'm glad, Liz, that you put it in the slide, the very first slide, that this was something that council directed staff to do. So quite often, we get involved in these things, and then all of a sudden we get to budget, and all of a sudden there's budget restraints. And every budget comes with complications, and this budget is no different. But as we move forward in this budget over the next few weeks, we will be hearing some things from Mr. Bruder and some of the directors, as well as our CEO and our Director of Finance, who's looking at me over the chair. and we will be hearing concerns. But I want to remind all of us that this was a direction of council to staff to make this a reality and to look at this. And I think that's really important, that as we continue to get this to the finish line, we remember that this was a direction of council. So thank you very much for this and for all the work that the group has done. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilor Brunei. Mr. CAO, do you have any comments?
Through you, Madam Mayor, hard to follow Councilor Brunei. He thanked everybody I wanted to thank, but maybe just, a little bit of extra kudos for you, Liz. You are an incredible asset, not only in the town of Lincoln and the region of Niagara, but I would suggest across the province. And when I read your bio every now and then, just to remind myself how well versed you are, you're recognized across the country. So we're happy and lucky to have you as a ally and as a resource to us. So I just wanted to offer my sincere thanks to you and to the staff team that's really put a lot in. And of course, the rest of the volunteers.
That's great, and I also want to thank all of you. I think I am absolutely sold on the importance of select committees. I think this was an excellent example of when you have a focus and you have some expertise of, actually, it was quite a broad range of expertise. You can just accomplish enormous, it's not just the success of it, it's just what you've created in terms of that overall presence in the town. So thank you all. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Verna. It's just great. And I have a question, Liz, about farmers. I know that there are trees available from a lot of different agencies, including Ontario Hydro, but maybe with farmers, we could develop a program that heightens the awareness of it. And because I think it's, we should consider planting trees proactively on farms in the event that you do have to cut something down. You've got something in the bank, if you will. But that may be another way of engaging them.
We haven't looked at that yet, but there are certainly groups like Landcare Niagara and other groups, Alice, that works with farming communities on tree planting projects on their land. So in the future, that's certainly something that the committee could look at, how we could foster those kinds of activities.
Right. Great. Well, thank you all very much. That was a great report. And
Thank you.
it doesn't sound like it's going to end anytime soon. So, all right. I have a motion moved by Councillor Brunei and seconded by Councillor Reimer that Council receive and file for information the presentation from Liz Benin on behalf of the Citizens Tree Canopy and Protection Working Group. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm just waiting for IT to put it on the screen there. Thank you so much, and I'll open that vote. And the vote is closed. And that carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That vote is carried, and I move on now to item 10.2. Thank you all very much for participating this evening. We're considering item 10.2 regarding Hospice Niagara program and expansion updates. And we have Executive Director Carol Nagy in attendance to speak to this item. Carol, please join us.
Thank you, Mayor Easton and Council and staff for having me here tonight. If you remember, I presented to you a while back virtually. I'm here in person to give you another update of what's happening at Hospice Niagara. I've handed out information tonight. I'm just going to do this through an informal discussion with you. Good news, we're now in the final stages of planning around the Welland Hospice. It will open in 2025. August, we're hoping for. And our last campaign out in the public is to raise money to make that hospice a home. And I just provided you an example of that. If we back up a little bit, I'm going to back up a little bit even more than that. I want to introduce our board chair, Archie Reynolds, who's a 30-some-odd-year resident of the town of Lincoln, and he's now the chair of the board of Hospice Niagara. When we started this whole thought of expansion, one of the reasons why we were putting more into bricks and mortar hospices around the region was that we were finding in the Stabler Centre, 50% of the people using that resource actually were coming from South Niagara. And that really helped us to sort out where the geography needed to be of these new residences. We want to make sure that these hospices are as close to people and their homes as they can be. And that was the goal of this campaign. We also have another hospice opening up in Fort Erie, and I just have to say we're looking at admitting yet another person from Fort Erie all the way up to the Stabler Centre. So you know the challenges that we have across the region. We know that for the town of Lincoln, you are actively using not only the Stabler Centre, but all of our other services of Hospice Niagara, and that will only continue to grow as your population grows, as your town grows closer to St. Catharines as well, and all of that new development that's happening. Roughly between 10 to 12% annually of the services that we provide are to the people of Lincoln. I know that's going to increase not only with the new hospices, but with also all the new programs that we're developing now. So, for example, we have what's called remote care monitoring, where somebody can be at home and have access to a palliative care special registered nurse by phone. That person who actually picks up the phone and talks to you about what's going on, which will help people manage their pain and symptoms. Maybe they can't get a hold of their family doc. They can certainly talk to our nurse. Our nurse that will then reach out to your doctor, make sure that you get the care that you need. That program is spread from Niagara all the way through Hamilton, and we're the provider of that program. We also have a lot of programs in partnership with the region. EMS. I'm very proud that years ago we started with our emergency staff with EMS, a small team that were trained in palliative care. We started that training. Now we have over 400 EMS drivers who are trained in palliative care that can help people at home with pain and symptom management, help them stay at home. And we're working on another project where we can have that EMS driver take a resident directly to a hospice so that they do not have to go to hospital at end of life. And that's one of our major goals. Hospitals are wonderful places, but they're not the best places to go for people at end of life. We're trying to keep people at home. We're trying to surround all our support around those people. We're trying to make sure that we have enough hospice beds available for anybody who makes that choice at end of life. We also have all of our bereavement programs. They're virtual, so they're serving people in Lincoln, all the way across Ontario, actually, and they're also in person. We are also one of the only providers in Ontario that has now a partnership with our school boards, where we are actively in classes helping students understand grief and loss and reacting to emergency situations when a classmate of theirs is passing away. We were just in a school last week helping classmates make bracelets in memory of the student that was passing away. Really special work that will touch students and kids within Lincoln as well. So I'm here to say we're still operating. We're still looking for some capital funds from all of the municipalities in Niagara to help us get to the finish line of this build, and also to continue as a strong organization serving everybody in Niagara that chooses not only hospice, but needs our care at home and needs our care to support them when they're grieving a loss. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol. Sorry. Thank you very much, Carol. And councillors, do you have any questions? All right, I have a motion. Oh, Councillor Njima. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, Carol. I looked up a little bit about the one that's going to be opening soon in Welland. And then I was looking at the one that's called, I forgot the new name of it now, the one on Ontario Street in St. Catharines. What's it called? Stabler House. That used to be Linwell, is that right, or?
No, that was always the Stabler House. It's been there for over 20 years now. It's always the hospice. Beside us is the long-term care residence, Lynn Haven. But we
Okay.
are two separate organizations. That's long-term care. We are a hospice.
I didn't realize that it was called Stabler. I knew there was long-term care, or sorry, I knew there was.
Hospice Niagara is the
ho-
organization.
Yeah, I knew there was a hospice operating out of there. And then there's one in Fort Erie coming up. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And I'm asking because I know that, I think it's a great idea to have hubs in communities where people can, like the one on Ontario Street, you can be in long-term care. There's a hospice nearby. Everything that you may need during certain stages of your life could potentially be within reach, and you kind of get to know each other in the community, and you're not moving far at any sort of stage. And I know there was, at one point, a proposed long-term care facility in Fort Erie. I don't know where it is right now. Councillor Foster probably knows, yeah. And is that on the same grounds? It is? Okay,
Okay,
that's
so
good.
through you, Mayor Easton,
Yeah.
if I can just explain, all three hospices are in close proximity on the grounds of long-term care homes. So the Stabler Center, we're next door. In Welland at Walker House, we are within the building, but we're still two separate organizations. Our partner there is Foyer Richelieu. And then in Fort Erie, we are on the grounds of the new Gilmore Lodge, which has
That's
moved
it. That's the
to
one.
King and Garrison.
Yeah, that's excellent. It's ideal.
Thank you.
That's my only question, Madam Mayor. That's it for me, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Carol, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. Oh, I'm turning my head in the opposite direction too quickly. Go ahead, Councillor Brunei.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Carol, for being here this evening with the presentation, and thank you to Chair Reynolds for also being here in support of you. So I know you threw out a number there. I just wanted to really reinforce that, I think there's a misconception that because we have a hospice in Grimsby, McNally House, which serves West Niagara, that there is a large component of Lincoln, not only in Beamsville, but also in Camden and Vineland and Jordan Station that are traveling to Hospice Niagara. Is that number, are you seeing huge increases in those numbers as our population grows? I'm assuming you are.
We're seeing a steady increase, absolutely.
Right. And how has, there's 12 municipalities in Niagara. How many municipalities have pledged their support present?
We have 9, and most of them are now finished their pledges of support and are asking me to come back to present to their councils again because they want to continue to support the capital builds and certainly the, in Welland, making hospice a home. So that's been really wonderful. We are still working on pledges with Niagara Falls and Fort Erie, it's not Fort Erie, Niagara Falls, Niagara-on-the-Lake, and yourselves.
Okay. So I'm wondering, Madam Mayor, if there's an opportunity, I don't know what the motion is that's being read after this presentation, if it's just to file and,
Yes, it is, to receive and file.
so I'm wondering if there's an opportunity, Madam Mayor, to pass a motion that we direct our CAO to continue to work with this team, Hospice Niagara, to explore potential support, maybe not for this budget as we're kind of halfway through the budget, but to continue to keep this as an opportunity for this council to pledge their support. We're hearing that 9 out of 12 have pledged the support. I think hospices are very important. I know they're near and dear to many families for end of life. But I'm wondering, Madam Mayor, if there's an opportunity that our CEO could maybe speak to this, and if there's an opportunity to look at this as we move forward in budget process.
Would you like to comment, Mr. CAO?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I know I toured the St. Catharines location with Carol, and I think like anytime we tour these facilities, it really brings to reality the care that's needed in our community and the care that's provided across this region. I think specifically to the motion, I just jotted a couple notes down. I know our clerk's working on some wording. I think staff can definitely take this back, maybe reach out to Carol, to you and your team, have a further conversation. I think as the councillor highlighted, we're kind of through our process now, or at least parts of our process, but definitely willing and open to sit down and see what we can work on as we move forward. I know some of these are multi-year commitments. I think you shared that with me in terms of what other municipalities are doing, and so if we can look at something like that, I think we'll collectively put our heads together and maybe have something in front of council in the coming months.
Thank you, Mr. CAO.
No, it's not for this budget.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Carol, thanks for being here this evening. Archie, thanks for being here. Just wanted to give you an update because I'm the Wise Guys Grants Committee Chair. So we've got a multi-year grant with your organization. We've pledged $75,000 over 3 years. 2024 is our final installment. Just to give you an update on our cycle, we're meeting this Thursday to review our grants. Our board committee meeting is at the end of the month, and then probably contact you early in the new year for presentation. We tried to do it to get them out by year end, but we found Christmas, we wanted it like a Christmas gift, but it was too hectic. So I'll reach out to you in the next coming weeks. Nice to see you here. And I would encourage, the municipality, if they can, like the multi-year grant, I think is the way to go. And, I mean, your organization, most organizations don't need all the money at once. And that's an easier way to attain a goal. So thank you very much. Thank you for coming and keeping your organization with us top of mind.
So, Madam Mayor, I'm going to put, so Councillor Bernay has put a motion on the floor that council direct the CAO to continue to work with Hospice Niagara and pledge support through the upcoming budget processes. And that's moved by Councillor Bernay. And Councillor Russell has offered to second it with an amendment to that, motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I would like to have it include to investigate future support through upcoming budgets and just report back to council so that we can discuss it at that time.
Is that right? For consideration. Yes. Councillor Bernay, I'm going to put this up on the screen. 1 second. Madam Mayor?
Okay, the motion. Sorry. The council direct the CAO to continue to work with Hospice Niagara and pledge support through the upcoming budget processes and report back to council for consideration. Moved by Councillor Brunet, seconded by Councillor Russell. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. I will, oh, we have a question.
Okay. Councillor Mikulik, go ahead.
Thank you. Are we pledging support or investigating support?
Can you read that part again, Madam Clerk? To pledge support through the upcoming budget processes. In other words, figure a way through
Which upcoming,
budget
Future?
processes.
Maybe instead of the word pledge, put explore.
explore?
All right, is explore better?
Sure.
Counselor?
Yeah.
Explore support?
Are there any more questions? If there aren't any, so Madam Clerk, you can put it up.
I will put it back up.
Okay, I have a motion moved by Councillor Brunet, seconded by Councillor Russell, that council direct the CAO to continue to work with Hospice Niagara and investigate support through the upcoming budget processes and report back to council for consideration.
Okay. I'll open up for voting, Madam Mayor.
Yep, thank you.
And I will close that vote. And that carries. We just have one more motion, and that was to receive and file the information presentation. I'll open that, Madam Mayor, if that's okay.
Yes, that council receive and file for information the presentation from Carol Nagy, Hospice Niagara. That was moved by Councillor Murray, seconded by Councillor Renjima. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
No problem. And that vote is open. Thank you. And that carries.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Carol and Mr. Reynolds. Thank you for coming this evening. Thanks, councillors.
Good evening, Council. Interesting discussion in and around both of those earlier items. I know my wife Sue had the opportunity to be at the meeting last week about the urban tree canopy. I know she was talking about some of the discussions that were going on and what was happening with that, and as well, I'm very pleased Hospice Niagara is in, and I know we were able to provide a donation or monies through Niagara Region, so and as well through Niagara Region for McNally House as well. So some positive things in that area. So speaking of positive, my report tonight is about budget, and there's certainly a lot of positive numbers in the budget, to say the least, this year. I will suggest to you that so far, I would say it hasn't been a terrible surprise, what it is that we're looking at the region. There certainly has been enough warnings provided over the last year or two on where costs are going. There's also been enough discussion in and around infrastructure at Niagara Region, particularly in the water and wastewater area. There's been some decisions over the last couple of years. There was a good plan put in place about, Mayor Easton, I think it was about 4 years ago, to go and actually have the money set aside for the wastewater and the water infrastructure. Council, on more than one occasion, decided to not do that as it's going on. And as we all know, when it comes to long-term planning, you start cutting things, you get yourselves into trouble. So this year, the water and wastewater, the operating side of things actually came in at a what I would consider to be decent level, the 3.72%. The overall effect here on Lincoln, actually, there was some fairly positive notes, the allocation going back in and through. If you remember, I remember it well, when there was some adjustments a few years ago that affected Lincoln quite substantially. But as we know, all of this is based on 3-year averaging and how the funding is going. And actually, the numbers have come in really quite nice for the town when it comes to water and wastewater coming back in and through. We have put through, or we've approved at this point, a 7.22% for capital financing. This is likely going to continue for the next few years at that level. And the reason is, of course, we have major infrastructure that has to be redone. So it's important to be moving forward with that. Niagara Transit, and again, I always say this just because I like doing it. Councillor Patrieva is more likely to be able to answer some of the questions on transit than I am. But the 3.66% increase on the operations side again, there was obviously a lot of sharp pencils were put to use as it was going through with that. Mayor Cisco, who's the chair of that committee, did an excellent job providing context at Niagara Region when we were going through and discussing. The one thing that is probably going to be surprising to the town is the allocation or the proportionment for Lincoln is going up quite substantially. And guess what? That's because of success. The reality is that you're using a lot of hours now in the system, and as I pointed out on this, it's expected in 2025 the hours are going to be 8,251 versus 2024 of the final estimate is at 5,980. So. And that's based on all sorts of projections that the team have done on what's going on in that area. So, court services, we don't see any effect on that. There's no effect on the levy that comes through with court services. There's a budget increase of 2.4% in and around Niagara Regional Housing. That number came in actually somewhat less than what we had expected when it was all said and done. And of course, there was the big one that we dealt with the other night. That would be the police budget. There was a requested increase that came in at 15.1%. The police chief actually pretty much started out right away saying, okay, you do have the option of reducing by 1.9%. Because of one of the requests, there's up to 60 new officers are going to be brought on board over the course of the next year. But of course, they're not all starting January 1st, so there's some leeway that's going on within that. The only downside, and it comes from the discussion, is that there's an expectation for 2026 from the police of 9.1%. And so now that we've reduced it 1.9, a little bit of basic mathematics, we're starting at 11% from the police next year. So what I'm saying to everybody is there's not a lot of fun in these numbers that we're looking at as we're going on. So I asked an important question the other night, as I referred to it as the elephant in the room. What do these overall effects look like because of the increase in police? The region right now has a budget, and we haven't got into the nuts and bolts of the region itself, but they said somewhere between about 10 and 10.5% we're looking at the region. So a lot of work for us to do yet on this. We're hearing from a lot of differing sectors that it's not acceptable, but on the opposite side of the coin, there's an awful lot of things that have to be done, and we have no choice. So anyway, I'm always open for constructive commentary back in and through from any one of you, and we certainly have some interesting times coming up. So that's about it for me for tonight. Thank you.
Well, you've lit up the Christmas tree.
It's kind of interesting because I kind of am surprised at the two that have come in right away, so.
Go ahead, Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Foster, always a pleasure to have you in and appreciate the updates as always. With the police budget, you mentioned that there are going to be 60 new staff members, recruits, whatever it might be, coming into the fold. Did we have an idea yet, through you, Madam Chair, of how many are going to be coming into Lincoln?
Mayor Easton asked that question the other evening, and the chief said there's been no plans on the redeployment of what's going on with things yet. So they will be coming back with that. My personal expectation, in having talked with some members of the board, is that we are going to be seeing a staff complement increase out here. What that's going to be, I'm not sure yet. So that's clearly operational on the part of the police. So.
Okay, well, that's good, and I appreciate that because that is obviously one of the great justifications we can always go back with to the public because we do get constant requests for more policing. So again, this is obviously something that looks like it's coming to fruition. Through you, second question, any idea of how many we're losing through retirement? Like if we're hiring 60, are there any that we're losing through attrition?
That was discussed the other evening as well. Yes, there's a certain degree of attrition that's going into place, but this is net new, the 60 we're talking about, and actually the hirings from what they were talking about the other evening have been going relatively well. There are a number of officers that are out on sort of long-term within the complement as well, so, and the mayor will correct me if I say this wrong, but there's a whole series of things that are going on in that area as well, so all in all, I thought it was pretty positive news about where they're going with the complement.
Yeah, no, that's great. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you very much. Through you to Councillor Foster, thank you for coming. I had a similar question to Councillor Russell's with regards to the police budget. I think we spoke about it offline. There's an increase to the taxpayer in Lincoln. What's the increase in service, right, in exchange? So I'm concerned about that. A question I have is with respect to regional transit, and I look at, what you have written down here that, is this an increase of $294,505 to Lincoln itself? On top of what we're currently paying?
So what's happening, and by the way, this was the agreement between the lower tier municipalities and the region when this all came into play, is that there would be adjustments made on a yearly basis based on the amount of usage that's going on. Mm-hmm. So, and the calculations have said, and Councillor Patriva can correct me if I'm wrong with this, but the calculations have said Lincoln is expected to be using about 1.8% of the overall transit when it's all said and done. So, and that's the bottom line numbers that we're looking at.
Just to clarify, so that's an increase on top of, or is that the total amount? that Lincoln residents will be paying?
You can.
I'm trying to figure out the math.
You can commentary it the way that you want. The reality is that Lincoln is just now going to be paying for the hours of service that it's actually going to be using. So if you're saying that that's an increase, I don't know, I would say yes, it's an increase, but again, it's part of the process to adjust these when it's going out, so.
Well, I'm still not 100% sure, and maybe the Director of Finance can clarify that. But when I look at an increase of roughly 2,291 hours from this year to next year, it works out to approximately $128 an hour, service hour. And again, I'm just using the numbers that are here, and this is all I can do as a counselor, but like when I look at that, it was 5 years ago that we spent $295,000 for the U-Link bus. That was the total that we would spend. So I'm not sure what we're spending on transit as far as an overall cost. If it's, I believe it was separated, it was parted out on the tax bill last year.
It still is.
And there's going to be an increase of this 18.8%. Again, like I think that's a lot.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. CAO, and I think, okay, Charlotte's here as well. Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the council. Charlotte and I were both CC'd on a regional email, so we were just both looking for the same email, so we probably both have the exact same information. Maybe just to take you to 2004, the service hours, as Councillor Foster was speaking of, were 5,980 service hours for a service allocation percentage of 1.3% at a cost, in terms of that special levy requisition, of $1,570,406. Lincoln in 2025 has service hours of 8,251 hours, or a service hour allocation of 1.8%, as the councillor said, which now equates to a special levy requisition of $1,864,912. So I can share that with members of council. So there is an increase, but it is based on the service hours.
Wow, okay, so that's, just to clarify, that's just about $2 million now that we're paying for transit within Lincoln for 8,251 hours. I don't have time to do the math per hour, but perhaps I can ask the regional councilor, what are other municipalities saying about this, these increases?
I would suggest to you that what we're seeing in Niagara, and was shown through the information that we received, we actually are relatively mild compared to what's going on in many of the regions across Ontario. Transit is expensive, and Niagara region is in with both feet on Niagara Transit. So there's costs that are going to come into play, and as per the agreements that have gone in place, this is the expectation that's going to be coming back in and through.
Okay.
Thank you. I just appreciate that. I just 5 years ago, or how many years ago was it that we were looking at this? Maybe three years ago that we had to opt in. And I don't know if we were projected these sorts of numbers or anywhere close. I would have to go back in previous notes, but I'm concerned about what transit's costing. And I understand it's expensive, not just for here, but for any municipality within Ontario. But with respect to service and with respect to cost, these numbers concern me. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Comment. Okay, thank you. So just a few things. This has been hanging on for a lot of years. I can tell you back, we were talking 15 years ago about what Niagara Transit is going to look like in the future. And that was when they started doing the intermunicipal buses at that point in time between the three major cities. There's a lot of things that you have to take into account with these things. Number one, we all want GO Transit. This particular council has voted over and over again saying 100% GO Transit coming into the municipality. Well, part of the cost of that is you have to have a municipal transit system. So that's part of this particular formula that's going into place. I would also suggest to you, I could tell you, Councillor Mikulik, you talked to me 15 years ago, I was dead against going with the transit route. I really, truly was. Those that know me, I know Councillor Pachariva was at the time, he knew I was sitting in my chair, which was approximately where he is now, and bouncing out of it. Because the whole thing was that this is an extremely expensive proposition when you get into a transit system. And it's going to remain expensive. They have a bunch of work that they're going to have to do as the transit system to go and take a look at efficiencies over the next few years. Part of the deals that went into place was that Welland, perfect, saved by the bell. The part of it is that Welland and St. Catharines and Niagara Falls have to be maintained with the exact same level of service that they had going into the deal. Okay? And I read in the St. Catharines Standard today, Mayor Diodati talking about all the empty buses running around Niagara Falls. So it's like, okay, so there's going to have to be some review and going into place with all of this stuff. Yeah, it's going to be expensive in the short term. So either we have transit or we don't, and we have transit. So I'll leave it at that.
Councillor, comments? Okay, just a second. If Councillor Njima and Councillor Murray would just come out. That's great. You come in. Okay. Councillor Murray, Councillor Njima, if you would put your name up there. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. And you know what, this had, Councillor Foster brought this forward a meeting or so ago, and I had all of the figures, because I was remote that night, on my desk. And they are on my desk. So I can go back, but like Rob said, we are a creature of our success. And part of the thing is, and again, this is the thing about budgets, and I'm going to say it's a small increase, 294,000 is 18.8%. But in the big picture of things, it's not. Transit, like arenas and parks and garbage, are not moneymakers, but they're a service that we need to provide. And Rob had highlighted too that, we were all in on GO, and we need to establish relatively adequate numbers to say that the GO train's going to come. We've got the GO bus to come. We established the stop at Ontario, and the ridership there is doing quite well. Part of the problem in all of this is numbers that we got were COVID numbers. So now we're finally getting some real numbers. And we are bumping up against Grimsby with a ridership number, getting close to 8,500 hours. And when we get to it's probably the sweet spot where now we're going to get a bus that will come from St. Catharines along Highway 8, like it used to with Canada Coach, and service us out here. Part of the issue too is, and we looked at it last time, and regional staff had said, look at your budget. And there was a fare increase on the table last budget, and it didn't happen because a lot of the people using the service are the marginalized community. They need to get to work. We heard it at our roundtable session with the medical group, is that people are coming to work at Albright, and they get dropped off at the GO bus, and then there's no way for them to get from the GO bus to Albright. So one of the things is we're going to go to GO Transit and see if they can do a loop up to Albright, drop off those essential workers, and then come back down. But it's all part of the process. One of the things we've done is we've standardized fares. So it's a fare increase. It's $3.50 across the entire region. Now, it's a little bit of an increase here because it was $3 to go within the municipality. Now it's $3.50. But the cost savings is going to come from the intermunicipal. So you used to be able to go from Lincoln to Smithville, Lincoln to Grimsby, $6 both way. Now it's $3.50. This is a heck of a deal. And the other problem is too, and we're finding it everywhere, the costs of infrastructure is going up. Buses cost more. We're trying to green the fleet. That costs more. And a lot of the things that were uploaded, the numbers weren't the actual numbers because it was based on COVID numbers. So we are working through this. I have reached out to our general manager. She's committed to come in the new year after all the budgets are finalized and speak to council. She'll tell us the numbers, answer any questions. There's a lot of capital that's had to go in to the facilities. But the good thing is we've got a new branding, we've got a new system called Niagara Transit. Not only are the ridership embracing this and numbers are going up, but so are the staff. That was one of the big issues that we thought, pulling 3 different unions together, Associated Paratransit. They've also increased the number of paratransit vehicles. So it's a good news story, and that was the bit of the, I guess, the disappointment, and Councillor Foster and I talked about it last time, is when Rob was here, this is a good news story. And, you know, like anything, the costs are going to go up, but it's predicated on the service that our residents use. So Councillor Mikulik, I can get you those numbers. I have them at home. I can shoot you an email, and then we can have a discussion. And like I say, the general manager and the manager of operations will be coming in the new year to answer any of our questions. So they've committed to doing that.
Yeah, and I'll add to that as well. Be more than happy to send on to all members of council the presentation that was given at the region in and around this. And by the way, don't kid yourself. The questions that you're asking, Councillor Mikulik and Councillor Russell, were asked by many at the region. And Ms. Stout did a great job in and around it. And she gave us the vision of where transit is going to. And so, all in all, I was happy to support when this was all said and done. I thought the Transit Commission did a great job with it. So.
Yeah. And through you, Your Worship, and to Councillor Foster, these were also raised at the Transit Commission. And, you know, we've got new subdivisions coming on board. The councillors in Niagara Falls were asking for increased service. Fort Erie was asking for dedicated bus because they're on demand right now because of the increase. But the commission acquiesced to no new service levels this year. And then we'll bring that forward next year. And part of the other issue too is that we're dealing with, and Rob and I addressed it at the last meeting, is that previously they were using the gas tax to supplement operations. And that's a slippery slope that you just can't do. And so we've committed to using that for capital going forward. And we're going to increase that. And we'll have a way to tackle this going forward. But all good questions, and know that we're on the right path, and know that these two are questions that were asked by all the members of the commission, repeated again at regional council, and we've come to I think, a good point on this.
And if I can also add through you, Madam Mayor, it was funny because General Manager Stout did a beeline to me as it was going on, because the previous year through budget, I had been asking about the efficiencies that are coming into play. Well, they've done a lot of work, and again, I give the Transit Commission a lot of credit, along with senior staff going on there. There has been some streamlining. There's been looking at doing shared services, and all of this stuff takes time to go and implement and move it forward. So anyway, yeah, it's interesting times on many levels of the budget, to say the least.
Councillor, do you have another question, Councillor?
I just want to follow up. I didn't know.
Okay, everybody
Yeah.
needs to come.
Everybody come off. Okay. Everybody come off, please. That's all right. Councillor Mikulik, you go ahead. And the rest of you come on in your order.
No, I bring it up, and I reiterate that, you know, to hear it's a good news story, like, it's good to hear that the ridership is up. It's just, you know, when I had a chance to do the quick math on this, and it's like $230 an hour, 200, service hour, I just remember back in the day when we were having discussions from moving to an on-demand transit system, and we were bringing up questions to the consultant back then, or to the provider. I forget what the name of the company was back then. We had concerns about this becoming unsustainable, or, you know, just too expensive. We were alleviated, you know, using COVID numbers. I don't use that. I'm not appreciating that as an excuse. I don't think that, you know, I'm not buying that. I don't think that's fair to say, well, we didn't anticipate it. It frustrates me that $230 an hour, we could be running our own on-demand transit system. And had we known, or had we been told more accurate projections or information back in the day, perhaps we would have voted no on this. And we voted yes, because we were told what we were told. And and I get it, that, you know, it's important, transit's important and this and that, but how many people are actually using, how many individuals are using it regularly, as opposed to, we haven't had no data on this recently, to my knowledge. So I think when we're talking about 1.9 million going to the region for management of transit, when we used to do it ourselves, I wonder if we could be doing it better as a municipality. That's why I bring it up. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Now, Councillor Njima, do you still have a question? Yes. Then you need to come on as well. And Councillor Murray, it's your turn. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Easton. Through you to Rob. You know what, I share some of Councillor Mikulik's concerns when you do the math on $240 an hour, $230 an hour. That's scary. And I was hoping that, similar to what he said, it would be great to see a little bit more data. Like, so if I look at 8,251 hours, I'd like to know how many trips that actually is. How many people are, not individual people, but how many actual trips is an hour one trip? Is that 22 people a day if you divide that by 365? Or is it more like, you know, during the workday, 100 people are using it? I'd like to know more about that. So if we could do that, that would be super. But I also would like to bring forward the concept that when we've been doing these economic development sector roundtables, a very strong continuing theme has been the challenge of labor, and a big piece that's driving that challenge is transportation. And we're hearing that people are having a hard time getting workers into their businesses. They're really having a hard time getting retail staff, getting manufacturing staff, and transit will help that. Transit is a fundamental requirement, and so I would just like to throw out that we should really be looking at this not as a cost of somebody taking a ride, but as an investment in economic development and in labor force development. And as a somewhat remote rural town, that's going to cost us more, but I think it's an investment that really has a big impact on how we can continue to grow. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Murray, or Councilor Majima, sorry. You're next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I wanted to say a little bit about the on-demand transit and the app, because I continue to hear, and I don't think you're probably the right person to ask, it may be Councillor Pachariva, but I do continue to hear concerns about it being difficult to operate. And the people that need it the most are like you said earlier on, Councillor Pachariva, are people that are marginalized, and those are the people that are going to be using it. And I continue to hear about the difficulty using the app from the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, but I also heard through a member of our Chamber of Commerce, a local business was having trouble because they'd hired a student, and the student was having trouble figuring out how to use the app and how to get from St. Catharines. So I can't personally speak to it, but I did sit with her, the one who had the concern, and I looked at the app and I couldn't figure out with her what was going on. It wasn't easy for me. So, you know, I don't know if you want to respond to that, but my question out of all of this is there an opportunity for the public, as this is kind of, I mean, transit overall is constantly morphing, and we're trying to get it all right in the big picture in the long run, so it's a little bit of a pilot project still, really, on-demand transit. Is there some sort of an ongoing opportunity for the public to provide feedback, other than, let's say, emailing their regional councillor, or, you know, has there been any sessions that people can come in and say, you know, hey, I'm really having trouble with this, look at this, you know, or, you know? So I guess that's a question for you.
Not my question.
Okay, yes, thank you, through you, your worship, to Councillor Wrench. But yes, so there's this, and this is part of the problem right now, is that a lot of people are calling in on the regular line to book trips, asking questions. And there's a dedicated helpline that you can call in and ask them to walk you through the app. I've asked time and time again, and staff is working on it, because you had brought it up before. You need a credit card, and a lot of the marginalized don't have credit cards, they have debit cards. So they're working through that as well. But again, it's you know, 3 transit systems with 3 fare boxes, and so they're trying to standardize this, and it's a slow process, and we're trying to get to the point too where the Presto card becomes available, and then you're able to go from Niagara right to Toronto using one card. So it is, and I know it's not what you want to hear, but this is all in the midst, and it's being worked on, and it's just going to take a little bit more time, but they're aware of it. And Councillor, any of those questions, shoot me an email, and I can relay it to staff, and they'll get right back to them. Okay? Don't hesitate to reach out, right? I'd rather anyone do that. And Councillor Bernay used the app when he was having issues and had no issue with it. And Tony, you can speak to that. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you told me how it was, you were amazed by it, so. We'll see.
I didn't
see the furrowed brow.
I didn't see that bright light shining over there. Councillor Majima, is your question answered? Yeah. Perfect. Okay, Councillor Brunet. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, so lots of good discussion. I'm sure Regional Councillor Foster didn't know that it was going to morph into this, but I think there's some good discussion here. You know, I'm really happy to see that the director, Ms. Stout, is coming, because I seem to have heard that she was coming quite some time ago, and I don't recall her ever being in front of council. So I would welcome her coming sooner than later, because I think it's long overdue. In terms of the app, yeah, I used the app when I had my surgery. But more recently, my daughter unfortunately moved back to Beamsville, and on moving day, fell and broke her leg as she fell off the back of the moving truck. And I can tell you that that was in July, and she tried to use it multiple times during a 2-week period and could not get it to work. And when it did work, she was unable to get a van to come. It kept saying that it was not available at this time. So anyway, I don't want to get off track here. To see these numbers, if these numbers are accurate, going from 5,980 to 8,251, I think this is success. But we did hear, to Councillor Rinjama's comments, I was at that roundtable where the new executive director of the Chamber of Commerce had spoken on some people's behalf that they were having very difficult times navigating the app. I've also heard it from members of the community that want to use this for getting to work early in the morning, that unfortunately they don't coincide with their start times of when they start work. So, I think we need to continue to evolve this. The one thing I would say, though, is I'm really, really growing tired of hearing that we need to do this to demonstrate the GO train coming to Beamsville. And I was one of the huge advocators on ULink, and I continue to be an advocate, but I'm not going to be an advocate much longer if these costs keep going up and we keep using it as an excuse that the GO train's coming to Lincoln, because I look at the amount of trains that are coming to Niagara. I think we've got a long, long way to go, and I don't want to be talking about this 10 years down the road saying we're still demonstrating the need for GO train into Niagara. So that's my point to that. Yeah, I understand we need to demonstrate that to Metrolinx and have bricks and mortar and have someone in the community like we do, working on our Go Hub. But I do believe that we should all agree that $2 million is a huge investment, to get transit to Lincoln. And I look forward to hearing the update from Ms. Stout and Councillor Pachariva as we move forward in 2025. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, and I've been very flexible because both of these items, this one and the police budget, were big items of discussion. I have a full report from the Police Services Board that was presented. If anyone, it's quite a few pages. Well, it isn't available electronically at the moment, but it would be it's worth the read. I think you will be quite surprised at what's happening across the entire region. It is pretty interesting. Mr. CAO?
Through you, Madam Mayor, maybe just a few comments, because I've sat on various roundtables and engaged in conversations with GO and Transit with you. And while I understand where both Regional Councillor Foster and Councillor Pachariva may be going with the reference to GO Transit, I do agree with Councillor Brune's comments, and I don't want to overemphasize GO to the detriment of underemphasizing the other elements that are important to transit. So this isn't about GO. I wouldn't want that to be the key message everybody leaves with. We've talked about it, and we've heard it around the roundtables. It's about improved access to various services, and I specifically talk about job access in terms of what we're hearing. Obviously, the environmental benefits, the support for seniors and people with disabilities who can't drive. One of the things that ULink provided us, and we heard over and over again, and I remember the stories, was reduced social isolation and that social connectivity that we heard about. I understand where council's at in terms of the deliberation around the finances of it. I encourage that type of dialogue. I think it's good. But I jump in to highlight this isn't about GO. Don't make GO the big issue here. It's not about GO. It's about the things I've mentioned. You can add to that transportation equity and the other things we're hearing in terms of what a number of folks around those tables, those round tables we've talked about, dozens and dozens and dozens of people have brought to our attention. So we are a rural community. We talk about that rural revitalization that's important, so I don't want that to get lost. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. And the last speaker will be Councillor Reimer.
Can I come in first? I'll join on with Councillor with CAO for a second.
You may.
You want to turn me on? Oh.
I do have that ability.
It's weird that
Go
actually
ahead.
will show up in on the video. Look, I 110% agree with CAO Kirkopoulos. It just happens to be another factor that's coming into play. It's very interesting. Niagara Transit won an award for what's happened with all of this amalgamation piece that's gone into play. In other words, it actually, when it's all said and done, has gone incredibly smoothly. But now they're starting to take a look at the future with the thing, and it's up to John and it's up to the rest on that particular commission to go through and say, okay, now we're seeing where the numbers really are. Now we have to make some tough decisions, okay? You know, do we cut back on some of the service in some of these areas? Do we start running a bus up and down Highway 8? That's going to be for the commission to decide, and that's what we, as our municipality, as well as Niagara Region, has said, that's for them to make that decision. So, and I really look forward to it. I think there's going to be some incredibly interesting discussions going on at the Transit Board of the course of the next few months.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor. And Councillor Reimer, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Through you to Councillor Foster. Thanks, Rob, as always, for your report. A question that's a little bit goes to your experience at the with corporate services and budget in general, big general eye in the sky view. One of our earlier budget meetings, Charlotte, our Director of Finance, and correct me if I'm wrong, Charlotte, used one of her many illustrations of the percentage of tax dollars, so the total tax dollars that Rob Foster pays, federal, provincial, like the total tax dollar, the small percentage, and I believe it was a single-digit number, Charlotte, that we get at the municipal level to do what we do. So this is just one example. We just talked about transit. There's a lot of good things that municipalities do. I think a lot of good things that Town Lincoln does. And so the question that I've been asked is, when does it end? So quite a few budget conversations, good budget conversations that turn positive. I think a lot of people don't realize, how much we do with the tax dollar that they give. But is that, and I'm going to ask this, Rob, from a structure on changing the tax structure. Do you think we will ever get more of that? And I say that because trying to budget projects, trying to move forward, is this going to be the same 10 years down the road? That's kind of where my eyes go all the time. And how do you think, and this isn't even a regional, amalgamation question. That's not that at all. Do you think we'll get something will drip down so that we get a little more of that on a regular basis in order to function?
What an amazingly good question, I must say, and it's one, actually, it's funny, I was on CKTB talking with Walter Senzik this afternoon. The exact same question came up, like first of all, and I'm hearing from various councillors, sustainability. Well, these increases are not sustainable on the property tax bill. They simply aren't. I mean, I get it. You guys get it as it's going on. So the question is, what are we going to do in the future with this? Like the province and the federal government are the ones with all the levers when it comes to doing the types of taxation that's really required to make the major infrastructure investments, to make all of this type of stuff. In the meantime, you and I, as John Q taxpayer, with our property taxes, are paying for new wastewater treatment plants and for new bridges going across in St. Catharines and all these other types of things. That's coming out of the taxes that you and I are paying to the region. And I don't believe that's the right level of taxation. I think it's the right level of government, but it's not the right level of taxation that's come into play. My friend Gary Zalepa, the mayor of Niagara-on-the-Lake, the Lord Mayor of Niagara-on-the-Lake, Gary has brought that up while he was chair of our budget committee for a number of years. And we've passed a number of motions out of the region going back to the province and the federal government saying this has to change. Like the way that this whole methodology is coming into play has to change. You guys see that yourselves here. I mean, you guys are investing in a lot of really good quality things for this municipality. And that's exactly what you should be doing. The problem is that there's a hell of a cost that comes into these things to go and do it. So is it right that it's directly onto the backs of the the property tax owners? I would suggest to you, I don't think so. I think there has to be other levers that come into play. So this would be a wonderful discussion to have some night as a roundtable going on, tying together. And I'd love to come in and talk with you guys about it at some committee meeting in the future. But, maybe it's time for the town and for the region and everyone else to basically just say enough is enough. You guys have to do something about this. Anyway, great commentary.
Just to follow up, Mayor, if I may. In your last comment, Rob, you said you guys. Are you referring to the province or to the feds?
I sometimes
Not to put
forget
you on the
what I've
spot. Not
just
to put you on the
said.
spot. You said
right.
you guys, and I assume because we're municipal and regional here, you're referring to either the province or the feds. Just-
Yeah, the province and the
Province,
feds.
okay.
Like
That would
they're
be-
the ones who have to
I'm only,
step up.
that's
Yeah.
where I would
Yeah,
lay my query too, so.
And
yeah.
we're continuously creatures of the province, which of course
Exactly, yeah.
doesn't help us
Help just
terribly much. And then we have a federal government that likes to go and do things and fight with the province while they're at it. So it's like,
Okay,
it's just an interesting system, to say the least, so.
thank you very much.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Mayor
Councillor
Easton.
Reimer, all right. Councillor Brunei, you go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had intended to ask this of Regional Councillor Foster, but we got so taken back by transit, which was a great conversation. But I'm wondering through you, Madam Mayor, if Regional Councillor Foster could give us an update on the tendering and the future construction of the bridge in the Jordan Hollow in front of the restaurant. Is there any update on that?
My understanding is that the process has been gone through to do the review of the bridge, and that the specifications are being drawn. I would be, well, it looks like the CAO may know better than me. The last I heard, it's something that's coming out early next year, but I'll turn it over to him to give you a much better idea.
Okay, well, we're not going to do that. We're going to,
Oh.
we're actually, since I'm chairing, we're going to Shannon.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. We've been working very closely with the region on their project because our project is essentially now, or hope to be, a sub-project of their project. So their RFP recently closed. They're evaluating, their plans are to go to their Public Works Committee on December 3rd, recommending an award. And they are planning to come to this council and delegate potentially the week later. We're discussing that date, and we'll be giving an update, as will they, on the project, and that will be an opportunity for council to also ask questions about the project.
Marvelous. Thank you very much.
Perfect. All right.
And the good
Thank
thing
you.
about that is that it was in the capital budget, so thank you.
Thank you very much, councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, councillors and staff, for all your answers. Good night. Okay, now. I just know that if I don't bring this to an end, it's so scintillating that we'll be going on for another half hour. Thanks very much, Rob. We appreciate your attention. Okay, and when the commissioner, or the manager of transit comes here, this will not be a free-for-all. Keep in mind that she works for the board, and she will be here to provide information. I can tell you that she stood for 3 hours and answered questions of the council at the last meeting. So she seems to have the stamina to stand up to the challenge of answering a lot of different questions. She did a very good job, and so be ready with your questions. She'll certainly be ready for us, and that'll be great. And for that matter, we could have, we can talk about having police come as well. I think it would be very valuable. There's a lot of very new information out there. Go ahead, Councillor Pachariva. Yeah, good, go. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know what, and to make sure that Carla has the answers, I would suggest that, send me your questions ahead of time so I can relay them to her so she's got the pertinent information. Though she is pretty quick on her feet.
She is
and
very
she
quick.
has information, and I've got to say, we are pretty lucky to have her driving the bus because she's already thinking 10 steps down the road. So,
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. That was a very good discussion. I have a motion moved by Councillor Mikulik and seconded by Councillor Russell that council receive and file for information the following delegation, Regional Council, Councillor Foster. Madam Clerk, please open the vote.
The vote is open. And that's closed, and that carries.
Okay, great. We have no items for consideration this evening. We move on to item 12.1, which is the council minutes of October the 21st, 2024. Any questions? Okay, I have a motion moved by Councillor Murray, seconded by Councillor Pachariva, that council approve the minutes of the following meetings of council minutes of October 21st, 2024. Madam Clerk, please open the vote.
The vote is open. I've closed the vote. That carries.
Great, that motion carries. We move on to item 13. We're now considering the following. And of these four items, Budget Committee minutes of October 28th, Committee of the Whole workshop minutes of November 6th, Committee of the Whole minutes of November the 11th, Budget Committee minutes of November 13th. Is there anything that anybody needs to have lifted, or can we deal with them all as a block? Okay, I see nothing. I have a motion moved by Councillor Brunet, seconded by Councillor Russell, that council approve the following recommendations from standing committees. Budget Committee minutes of October 28th, 2024, Committee of the Whole workshop minutes of November 6th, 2024, Committee of the Whole minutes of November the 11th, 2024, Budget Committee minutes of November 13th, 2024. Madam Clerk, would you please call out the vote?
Vote is open. And I will close that vote. That carries, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. That motion carried. We move on to notice of motion, and I've not been advised of any notice of motion. Nothing to add there. Okay, we're moving on to item 15, which is the mayor's report. And I'll quickly look at a few items that have come up since our last committee meeting, or our last council meeting, which was on October the 21st. And there's a few items that there have been a lot of routine meetings that I've been attending, and you've been at a lot of meetings as well, and I certainly appreciate your turning out. Makes a big difference to the people that organize these things. There's a few themes that are starting to come up, which I think are very, very important. One of them is around a visit that a number of us made to Lincoln Lodge, which is located on Rittenhouse Road. And we were there not so much to talk, in fact, we weren't there to talk at all about the application that they put into the planning department, but more to speak to the issue of the support that is provided with the residents that live there. And for the most part, the conversation was populated by comments and history by the families and the people that are considered the legal guardians of the people that live there. And as well, we did hear from some of the senior staff, the professional staff that work there. And I really felt that it was quite beneficial. We had an excellent tour, so there was no holding us back from going where we wanted to go to have a look. Particularly the outside, it was pretty heartwarming to see the kind of facility that is there to support these people. And one of the most important elements of this is really related to the fact that these people are not there as patients. This is their home. And so they live in a home-like environment, and there are elements of them moving around in the neighborhood that are akin to being in a home. This is not an institution as I would define an institution, a mental institution, or any other kind of an institution. So we are becoming more familiar with the programs. We've been invited now to go for tea in a couple of weeks, maybe in another week, I've forgotten. But we certainly listened to what the families had to say about the tragedy of their ability to find care for their family members. It was really quite, it was very difficult to listen to how the system has failed them in so many ways. So I really feel that that's quite important, and I wanted to speak about that. The Joint Fire Committee, as you know, I'm sitting on that now. The pilot continues. We've had two meetings now, onto our third meeting since I've joined the committee, and there is a significant emphasis being placed on getting work done, meeting on a regular basis, getting work done, and making way with the expectations of both municipalities. For the benefit of the public, I want you to understand that we have been having some significant and numerous discussions, not just here at the town, but also across the region with members of the public as well as physician groups about the shortage of primary care physicians. We know that this situation has the potential to be very challenging in the future, and we know that anybody that gets caught up in that loop of retiring physicians will have a very difficult time getting support in the future. So we continue, we, meaning councillors, members of our staff here, we continue to work with the region. I'll be going to another session that is being sponsored by the regional chair. Staff will be going with me, and will continue to advocate on your behalf. We had a day here last week where kids and grandkids came to work. I mention it because the communities need to know, and young people in the communities need to know, that there are very, very challenging and interesting occupations within municipalities. And so we celebrated, and then last week we were or the week prior we celebrated, and then last week the students came in, and I think they really had their eyes open when they saw some of the jobs, particularly, and I'm just going to focus particularly on the heavy equipment and some of the trades. We've had several flag raisings. I mean, really, every time you go past the town hall, there's a new flag out there. It just shows you how diverse our community is, how interested people are in the welfare of others, and how they express it. We attended, councillors and myself attended the Firefighter Appreciation Night. It was one of the largest that we'd had. It was a great night. Everybody was just was in a very, very good frame of mind, and we certainly appreciate everything that our firefighters do for us. We continue to work our way through budget committees, and certainly the discussion that you heard tonight, it's not uncommon conversation. It's important conversation, and we're very, very fortunate to have staff available at all levels to be able to provide us with the information we're looking for. I want to make a special note of the fact that Dr. Webube, who was one of the leading physicians in the area of maintaining a hospital in Grimsby for West Niagara, he's continuing to keep his own office in this area. with obstetrics and now offers fertility services. On November the 2nd, a number of us went to the Beamsville Bakery 50th anniversary, and also the mini forest tree planting. And then later, we went down to, which included a garden bench memorial in recognizing Valerie Fleming. And that was placed by the Fleming family. And then later that day, we went to the Jordan Village ribbon cutting, which you've already heard about. But these are very typical days for us now. There's a great deal happening in the community. I want to congratulate the winners of the Harvest Hop and the Discovery Program. And I drew some winners and last week with the students that were in. And I want to thank Brittany Bailuski and all of Paul Deanne's staff for all the great work that they do in these areas. Make no mistake, we are all around this table, and including all of our staff, very, very concerned about what's happening at Jillian's Place. The Wrapped Up Encouraged Pancake Breakfast I wasn't able to go to, but we certainly had great representation there. The numbers of people that are revolving through the door at Jillian's Place are just absolutely monumental. And it's hard to really understand what's going on in the community, but there's a huge amount of support that's required in order to keep these families having any semblance of stability. On November the 12th, we attended at Ferguson Neudorf with MPP and Minister Sam Oosterhoff. They were receiving a very large loan, but also some grant money for expansion of their services. You may or may not know that they have a facility in Fort Erie that's 20,000 square feet. We've spoken at length about the budget, so we don't need to repeat that. Tomorrow, November the 19th, the CAO and I and possibly others will be on the CKTB road show. It's early in the morning. I think we start about 8 o'clock. We'll be talking about all kinds of things. There's themes that are coming up around homelessness, job creation, food safety, elder care, and there's roundtables that are taking place as well that the staff are organizing with members of the public around BDSS, and I understand that they are also very successful. I will reinforce as well that the roundtables that we had, the 6 of them that we had, there wasn't one roundtable that did not include multiples on the issue of and the need for transit in order for them to carry on with their businesses in a successful manner. So I will leave it at that. And thank you very much, and thanks to all council members and staff who continue to support attendance and presence at these meetings. I have a motion moved by Councillor Renjima, seconded by Councillor Mikulik, that Council receive and file this information, the following mayor's report. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and the vote is open. I'll close that vote. That carries.
Thank you. The motion is carried. We move on to item number 16, which is a motion to consider confidential matters. We have none this evening. Item 17 is a motion to approve bylaws, and we have 12 bylaws for consideration this evening. And I have a note here, Councillor Mikulik, that you have a question about bylaw 2024-74. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor Easton. Through you to our Director of Planning. I look at this drawing, and I look at this site plan, and I look at, and I think about the future of this area, what I envision down the road, and what this isn't typical. We don't typically see many schools built in our town. But what sort of influence do we have on design, planning, land use, with respect to properties such as this?
Go ahead, Mr. Bruder.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, you're right. We don't see a whole lot of schools built in our area, or we haven't in the past little while. This is one of just two major projects in the past little bit. But we have our general zoning provisions that stipulate what the building envelope can be, where it is on the site. We've got other things such as maximum lot coverages for the building itself, minimum landscaped open spaces, a lot of things you'd see on, land use permissions for a variety of different zones. So the same thing applies for schools. We do have those things in our zoning to provide some parameters.
I appreciate that. It's just when I look at this site plan, I see a lot of asphalt. I see a lot of parking. I see a lot of turnarounds. And I see a small building. I see provisions for a future addition of what looks like to be 5 classrooms, and then a future possibility for 6 portables. It's looking like this is all on asphalt with some green space towards the south end. And I'm just wondering, should this have been perhaps like a 2-story building if we're building a smaller, or a school of this size on a smaller piece of land? Is the green space that is provided at this school site, would it accommodate a soccer game, a full-size soccer field? Would it accommodate a baseball diamond? Trying to get some scale as far as what that playground looks like, especially when I'm typically used to a school being a lot of green space as opposed to building and parking.
Mr. Bruder?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Again, we do have some general parameters. When I look at the site, you're right, there is a good asphalt area. One of the things that also needed to happen when planning for this particular school, have to make sure the access, egress, and all of that, the kiss and ride, making sure things are happening internally. So there was that consideration. But even with that, you did note there is some green space or sodded area to the south, on the south property lines. It's pretty good size. It's about, I think I mentioned 46,000 square feet or so in the back. And then in front of that, there is some asphalt space too. Perhaps there could be a basketball nets put up in some of those areas. There's a little play structure for the kindergarten classes too in that space. So all in all, there is a good chunk of open space. Could it have been a 2-story building? I think that's a valid question to ask. But again, when we look at what is and what is not in our purview as a municipality, it was hard to really go there too much in the design. When you're dealing with a school board, typically they've got their parameters, their site-specific things that they're looking for. I do agree with you that open space is key. Could this accommodate a soccer game? I mean, we're talking about an elementary school. There could definitely be a soccer game played at recess in that green space. If you're talking about a fully measured out soccer field that you could actually hold any type of league capacity, it would be tight, to be honest with you. Baseball games, I mean, I think you'd also have to note in here, it depends on what that means. If the kids are having fun playing a little bit, probably. If you're having league games, maybe not, but that's kind of the balance. You have to look at what the site needs to accommodate internally from another service and infrastructure and traffic and parking perspective, and try to balance things out. And I think that's what the school board did here. But again, being that they met the land use provisions we have, it was hard to really get too granular into some of those discussions, Councillor.
Okay, thank you for that. And just one more question with respect to this particular school. When we talk about parking's an issue everywhere we go. It doesn't matter what we build. It could be a home, it could be an apartment building. But with a school, sometimes there's days where parking overflows onto the street, special events, Christmas concert, this sort of thing. And, there's parking lots in other areas that people use. Would this school, with this potential number, this possible growth, accommodate parking, let's say on the street, off-site, or how does that look in the future down the road?
Through you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I think it's good to note that they're actually exceeding what, again, it's our parking requirements in our town zoning bylaw, but they are exceeding those requirements. But also, I mentioned there's kind of a little bit of an area, asphalted area that's in between where this sodded area is and the school and the actual designated parking. If there was some overflow during special events and things like that, I think there's an opportunity to manage some additional parking on site there, which again, was kind of the goal of the site plan too, to try to, again, accommodate all of these things. So I think there has been some allowance for that, depending on the event size, of course. So I think there is an ability.
Okay. As long as you're comfortable with that, it's just, given the area and there's not a lot of open space around there to facilitate this sort of, like, if they were to host a craft show similar to what Vineland Public School or any of this sort of thing, I mean, we have to make sure that we can accommodate some sort of overflow parking should that ever happen, but thank you. And again, I'm only bringing this up from my perspective. This is the first time I'm seeing this drawing and this sketch in the future when we talk about these things in the future. Thank you.
Yes, and and the point being that it is their project, and so we don't see the plans. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Bruder. All right, I don't have any other questions, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva, seconded by Councillor Murray, that leave be given to approve the following bylaws. 2024-72, a bylaw to amend bylaw 2022-75, being a bylaw to delegate certain powers and duties to officers and employees of the town of Lincoln. 2024-73, a bylaw to provide for the appointment of a deputy clerk for the town of Lincoln. 2024-74, a bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Lincoln, Niagara Catholic District School Board, together with any and all mortgagees that may be on title at the point of registration of the agreement. 2024-75, bylaw to amend bylaw 2024-28, being a bylaw for the imposition of development charges, and to repeal bylaws 2018-93 and 2022-30, fire protection services. 2024-76, a bylaw to amend bylaw 2024-29, being a bylaw for the imposition of development charges, and to repeal bylaw 2018-93 and 2022-30 as it relates to library services. 2024-77, a bylaw to amend bylaw 2024-30, being a bylaw for the imposition of development charges, and to repeal bylaw 2018-93 and 2022-30 as it relates to parks and recreation and growth studies. 2024-78, bylaw to amend bylaw 2024-31, being a bylaw for the imposition of development charges, to repeal bylaw 2018-93 and 2022-30, services related to a highway. 2024-79 is a bylaw to amend bylaw 24-32, being a bylaw for the imposition of development charges, and to repeal bylaw 2018-93 and 2022-30 regarding stormwater drainage Camden. 2024-80, a bylaw to amend bylaw 2024-33, being a bylaw for the imposition of development charges, and to repeal bylaw 2018-93 and 2022-30 stormwater drainage services. 2024-81, a bylaw to amend bylaw 2024-34, being a bylaw for the imposition of development charges, and to repeal bylaw 2018-93 and 2022-30 wastewater services. 2024-82, a bylaw to amend bylaw 2024-35, being a bylaw for the imposition of development charges, and to repeal bylaw 2018-93 and 2022-30 water services. 2024-83, a bylaw to relieve Block 1 of Registered Plan 30M-476 blocks from the provisions of Section 50, subsection 5, Part Lot Control of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13, as amended, re-benchmark townhouse development. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and the vote's open.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank the staff very much for the detailed information that they gave us at the last meeting, so that we didn't have to be concerned about any of those, the remaining items. All right, and number
Councillor
18.
Bernay, are you?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Councillor Bernay, did you have a question?
It's okay. I gotcha.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Did I vote, Madam Clerk?
You did.
Thank you.
I'll close that,
Perfect.
and it carries.
All right. That motion is carried, and we move on to item 18, which is a motion to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting. We will now confirm the proceedings of the council meeting. I have a motion moved by Councillor Russell, seconded by Councillor Brunei, that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 2024-84, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held Monday, November 18th, 2024, being read a first, second, and third time, that bylaw number 2024-84 be enacted and passed, that the mayor and clerk sign and seal the said bylaw. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
And the vote is open. And I'll close it, and that carries.
Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 19 is council remarks. Before we adjourn, do members have any comments? Councillor Pachariba.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And through you, I had sent an email to Director Bruder. We had the bylaw for benchmark townhouse development. The developer that's doing this, we've had issues with Highland Park extension, Stadelbauer extension, the build up behind Connor Drive, and we continue to have issues here. There was a plan in place for street sweeping, and street sweeper showed up on Friday, broke down, didn't do anything. The internal roads are caked with dirt, so last night's rain created a stream of mud down Mountain Street. The neighborhood is expressing frustration with this. It's a development that sits on red clay. So you got to keep your windows closed. You can't have them open. It's just the utter disdain that this developer shows towards our residents on not doing the right thing. So I know Mr. Bruder had developed a schedule and had taken some really affirmative action. And Matt, I'm really proud of you for doing that. So just wanted you to hear about that and plans going forward. And again, yourself and Mr. Kirkopoulos drove by and confirmed that I wasn't making this stuff up. And how do we set the neighborhood at some ease here? And how do we hold this? And I know we couldn't not approve the bylaw covering this, but what kind of tools do we have in our toolbox to say, okay, enough is enough?
Who's answering? Mr. Bruder.
Start there.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and through you to the councillor. Yeah, you're right, councillor. Upon seeing that email, I did drive down to the site, and I did. There's two problems here, and one feeds into the other. You mentioned the mud on the internal road. That's kind of what's causing the problem here, because all the vehicles going in there when it's wet, they're getting it all over themselves, and they're leaving the site. We were able to, speak with this particular developer today and indicate that, if there wasn't going to be action in cleaning Mountain Street today, we were going to do it. That it was done today. However, the problem persists with the internal road network. I think we do have provisions in our site plan agreements that pertain to this as well, not just Mountain Street, but internal roadways too. We've made that clear that the same thing will apply, typically speaking, when you're dealing internal to the site, i.e. not a piece of public land that's impacted. There's a little bit more of a response time that you have to give them in terms of turnaround, but we've given them said notice, and that we will also be going in and cleaning up the internal road if we have to, at the developer's expense. So we've been communicating that. Like you said, we did have a plan of action in terms of regular and biweekly, or twice a week, street sweeping. We're going to continue to hit on that, but in the meanwhile, those are the other comments that I could provide you.
Satisfied?
Yep, yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Ritter, because, I mean, in my travels, around various other municipalities, Brampton, Mississauga, you name it, these developments are going in, and what happens is the roads are swept at night. Like, they're done overnight, so when the work commences in the morning, it's a clean site, right? So if the Matamis and those large builders can do it in other municipalities, we should be able to have it done here. So I appreciate your due diligence. Keep up the good work, and I'll keep sending you the pictures.
So, Mr. Bruder, is this a developer that we don't know? What is this developer's name? What's the secret here? This guy has, well, come on. Are we talking about the problem, or are we not talking about the problem? Okay, I'm getting all kinds of funny faces, so I guess we're not talking about the problem. I'm talking about it. This is Mr. Lasani and his business, and this is not the first time. This is repeat, repeat, and repeat. So I'm glad that the staff are dealing with it. We're not talking around the subject. Benchmark is the name of the development. The developer is Lasani Homes. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll move on to Councillor Njima. Sorry.
It's right. Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is about the proclamation you had earlier on, and I'm not sure who this question will go through to, but through you, your proclamation about the being November 2024 as being CPR Awareness Month. I took CPR training when my girls were little, because it was what you did, right? I don't remember a whole lot about it. I'm sure some of it sunk in. But I'm wondering if there's an opportunity, because I was speaking to somebody a few weeks ago or a few months ago who used to do training at the region for all the region's staff on a fairly regular basis. And he asked me, do you as a counselor take CPR training? Do you have an opportunity? And I said no. So I don't know if the opportunity is there for staff here. And if there is, could that be extended to council? Could we have an opportunity to take that training as well?
All right, that's a good idea. Mr. CEO, do you organize this? Who organizes this?
Through you, Madam Clerk, I know, through you, Madam Mayor, I know our clerk has some information. I think the short answer to the councillor is yes. I know there's some emails that staff are sending around relative to this, but Julie can share the dates and who to reach out to.
To the councillor, through the mayor. Thanks for the question, and the Joint Health Safety Committee is actually working on that, and they are going to be offered up to council as well as staff, so that is coming.
Okay, that's
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you, and go ahead, Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you very much, Mayor Easton. I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting when we were talking about announcements, but I just wanted to mention that the museum is having a Deep Roots dinner on December the 5th. Tickets are available. It's a pretty significant fundraiser. I'm looking forward to it. I was there last year. I'm bringing my wife and my credit card, and hoping to see anybody else that might be attending. So I just wanted to give the museum a little plug
That's
there.
very good, Councillor Mikulik. Okay, yes, and I think the deadline is coming up, but I think that, I know it's passed, but I think if, you could always give Andrea a call and find out what the state of affairs is. Thanks very much, Councillor. Mr. CAO, you have
Through you,
something to add.
so I do. But to that point, the MC for that evening is also yours truly. I don't know if that makes it a better evening or less better for some, but I just thought I would add that to the councillor's plug. I wanted to take a quick moment. Mr. Deanny will say a few words. He emailed you earlier this week, but it is, with mixed emotions that we shared earlier this week, that Mr. Cameron Rotz will be leaving the town of Lincoln. He is embarking on an exciting next chapter of his career, joining Niagara Industrial Supplies, which is a family business that his father and uncle started many, many years ago. So we wish him all the best in his future. He will be a big miss for us. He joined us back in 2020 as an ECDEV intern, and I think we can all attest to how invaluable he's been for the town, his character, his personality, that infectious laugh that he does have. So I wish him well. I know all of you do as well. A number of you saw him at a recent event, but I didn't want the evening to go by without me mentioning that, and I will turn it over to Mr. Deanne if he's got a few additional words.
Go ahead, Mr. Deanne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just to dovetail in terms of what the CAO just mentioned, Mr. Rouse unfortunately wasn't able to join us this evening, but we'll make sure that he watches the replay tomorrow morning. And so, at the end of the day, he was an invaluable member of the team that joined us back in 2020, as the CAO just indicated, as our intern, and quickly became a strong member of the team, helping guide our businesses throughout the pandemic, leading some of our initiatives, work in Lincoln, some of our, PPE responses to businesses, also executing on our economic development strategy. So he's left an indelible mark on not only ECDEV here, but our community. So we're very much thankful for the time that we did have him, and we'll be looking to fet him in another way as well. But at the end of the day, we do wish him all the best in his success working in the private sector for the family business. And we told him that he's can't go too far, because at the end of the day, we're going to be looking for him to invest on the private side here in our community. So we do want to thank him and wish him all the best. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Yes, I must say, the most recent, of course, was the roundtables, and he made some very good overtures, and we had great diversity around those tables, and they were very, very well organized, and the feedback was superb as well. People were very comfortable, and we got a lot of good information. Okay. I have a motion that the council meeting on November the 18th, 2024 be adjourned at 18:40. Well, I'm sorry, it's 20:40 hours, which is 8:40. Okay, Madam Clerk, please open the vote.
The vote is open. I'll close that vote. I got your vote. Yep. Thanks.
I'll stay with you.
Appreciate